Welcome back to The Balancing Act. I'm Dan Strafford today with, of course, Dr. Andrew Tempte. We're going to talk about the Reskilling Revolution over the next several episodes. Andy will be speaking to guests about the revolution, the Reskilling Revolution, and we thought it would be a good idea to set the baseline, the foundation for those future discussions. But more importantly, I get to say hi to Andy. It's been a while. How you been, Andy?
It has, as the kids are saying now, it has been a minute.
It has been several minutes, but you've been good. Things are going well. The podcast, I know you've had some great guests on, more booked in the future.
Yeah, we're just having loads of fun, writing the Saturday Morning Muse every week and having guests on the podcast, former colleagues, people I haven't met before. It's just so much fun. We just finished this whole series on trust and accountability. Yep. We'll pick those concepts back up a little bit later, but thought that we should spend some time talking about reskilling and the reskilling revolution and kind of all things workforce development here for a few weeks.
Absolutely. And I think I will use the term buzzwords, and I don't want to give it the negative connotation that often buzzword, but these are words: reskilling revolution, upskilling, backskilling, all of these things that are being discussed as the workforce changes, right? As people are looking for new work, the great resignation, all of these things that we hear time and time again. For the specific set we're talking about here with reskilling revolution, what is that concept? I know there are a lot of different large organizations out there that have discussed this and have tried to lay some foundation for it. But from your perspective, can you introduce it to the listeners and really give us the foundation to jump off from?
Yeah, well, we've been dealing with skills gaps for a long time. You can trace skills gaps back centuries, right? And as technology changes, skill needs change, and skill gaps are created, and then education catches up, and the gap closes, and then we move on to the next thing. Right. Well, we're now in an era where computers will begin thinking at low but ever increasing cognitive levels. Many more jobs will be disrupted, and this concept of reskilling versus upskilling is really taken the forefront of the conversation. And I'll just remind our listeners that upskilling is the process of changing the skill profile of your job within the current role or job, whereas reskilling is a substantive change of the job role and really a new set of skills for that individual to do something else in the workplace. This concept of reskilling is very important, and the crux of what we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks is questions like, does higher education have a role in the reskilling revolution? What is the value of a degree as a signal of workplace competency versus what later on in our show today we're going to talk about the skill portfolio as an alternative. So, you hit the nail on the head when you started. The buzzword of reskilling. You'll ask me a follow-up question about what that really means in just a second. But, are we just in a moment in time where we're just chasing around another shiny ball and there's really nothing new here? And really, what is that new if it indeed exists?
I will say, I know you're going to have my former boss, but also former co-host Mike Palmer on soon. We were big fans of the Gartner Hype Cycle. And the Gartner Hype Cycle, go Google it, there are images out there, but it's a lot of, the rising expectations, the trough on the other side, and then when it gets adopted. And I wonder where Gartner would put reskilling revolution on sort of that map. It feels like we're at sort of that peak where everyone's into it, and then how do we understand it as it comes down and gets adopted into the mainstream of, as you said, higher education, the workplace, how we're thinking about our careers moving forward. If we're laying the foundation here, Andy, what's the most important future skills? Like, what are we reskilling towards that anyone listening should be, one, thinking about, but two, hoping to acquire as they are themselves maybe reskilling for a new career?
Yeah, let's talk first about the legitimacy, if you will, of this cycle that we're in, and the World Economic Forum. Most people would know World Economic Forum as the group that puts on the Davos conference every year in Switzerland, but they do so much more than that. And the future of work and the future of jobs is one of their key pillars, and it's really World Economic Forum and several of the companies that they work with that have coined this term, the Reskilling Revolution. For our listeners who don't know, World Economic Forum has a very, very rich website that you can go to with all sorts of resources. They've got the Future of Jobs report. They've got the Global Social Mobility report that they put out, the promise of the future of work, the jobs of tomorrow, towards a reskilling revolution. I'm just rattling off a couple of their white papers. But if you're looking for data and you're looking for a real foundation of research to hang your hat on, go to the World Economic Forum or the WEF website and get their perspective on skills and education. They do a lot in global warming and global hunger, et cetera. So really cool place to get familiar with. Now, with that said, World Economic Forum has written a number of white papers on this topic, and they've started this thing called the Skills Link Alliance, where they're working with large businesses around the world to have skills be adopted as hiring mechanisms, and that's vis-a-vis, oh, Dan, you've got a degree from blah, blah, blah. That's a great signal of workplace competency. And this is where you whisper out the side of your mouth, not. And so we're all questioning, is the degree truly a signal of workplace competency, or can you show up in the workplace with a portfolio of demonstrated skills? And that's what this Skills Link Alliance is really trying to get at, and open up and have the market for jobs be much more accessible. We all know that degrees are a challenge for many people to get from a monetary perspective and a time commitment perspective. So you and I have talked about learn to work, which is get a degree and then go to work, versus work to learn, which is much more this arc of the skill portfolio and where World Economic Forum wants us to go. You asked a very specific question about the skills. So let's go to that real quick here. As you might imagine, many of the skills of tomorrow are in categories like data and artificial intelligence, engineering and cloud computing. But what our listeners might not immediately jump to is that job clusters like people and culture, product development, sales, marketing, and content. Those job clusters are at the forefront of future jobs. So not all jobs are technology jobs in the future. That's kind of point number one here. And the second point is, if you look at the top skills for 2025 or 2030, by the way, the Reskilling Revolution is all about, we got to reskill 1 billion people by 2030. But what are those skills? It's like analytical thinking and innovation, active learning and learning strategies, complex problem solving, critical thinking and analysis, creativity, originality and initiative, leadership and social influence, resilience, stress tolerance and flexibility, reasoning, problem solving, ideation, emotional intelligence. So those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, and 11 in the list of the top 15 skills.
Right.
Those aren't coding skills.
Right.
Those are human skills, right?
It's it's the arts, but we can talk about that on a separate subject. And I've said it a couple of times, previous life with Kaplan, it's all pendulum swings, right? It feels like there are these harsh swings and we need to find the way to stay in that sort of middle ground more often than these harsh swings that we see in education and in business. People learn and those people become, coaches and mentors and book writers and such as yourself who share, what they have. But it seems so often that we get that harsh swing back. Now, I will also point out, you said about the, out of the side of your mouth, not. I made the reference right away, and this is very much a pop culture reference, so bear with me. On a Simpsons episode, Homer once said that having an elephant works in theory, and Marge replies, yes, in theory. Communism works in theory. And then they just jumped on to a whole other story. But when you said that was, a lot of college is the theory of something, the theory of journalism, or the thought of, not the practice of. Can I actually do it? And I find it fascinating that we're having this discussion. Like, are we getting the skills in college that actually allow me to go do the job or know how the job works or what I need to do day one when I sit down at a keyboard or a teleprompter or whatever it might be, whatever business you're in. But it's fascinating also, we're 8 years away from 2030. And you mentioned 1 billion people with a B, 1 billion people. That is a gigantic number to think through in a short amount of time. I know 2030 feels like it's flying cars and off in the distance, but it's 8 years away. We don't have a global higher education system right now, it would seem, that can handle that. What do you think we need to develop in alternative pathways into the world of work and other signals of work readiness other than the degree as we currently know it?
Yeah. So, there are all sorts of research reports of if you ask provosts how ready graduates from their colleges are for the world of work, right. Provosts say with 90% responses that our students are ready for the world of work. And then you go interview CEOs about the readiness of college graduates, and they provide numbers that are in the 20, 30, 40% believe that college graduates are ready for the world of work. So there's clearly a gulf between what higher education believes in terms of the outcomes or the product that they're producing for the workforce and their work readiness, and what the market believes they're getting from higher education. So that's that kind of work readiness gap is certainly something that higher education is working to solve. But corporations are sitting here at the same time saying, "Wow, the skill profile of the people that work in our business is going to have to change so dramatically. Where am I going to go to upskill and reskill my people?" Because leaders are also recognizing that there just aren't enough humans out there with different skill sets that they can go tap into in the open marketplace for talent and replace people that are currently don't have the skill profile that's necessary. So the old model was, well, let's just fire everybody that doesn't have the skill profile that we need and let's go hire new. So corporate leaders are saying, okay, so that's not going to work. And what they're recognizing is that we as corporations are really going to have to become the educators here. We will certainly have to work with institutions of higher learning. And I totally support that. We need more conversations, not less, between corporate leaders and institutional leaders in higher education. But we've got a real problem with accessibility to the world of work. Right. The degree and college, that is a really high bar to cross, especially for the disadvantaged disadvantaged in our communities. So we need alternative pathways into the world of work. We need these. We're going to have Brandon Bastide on in a couple of weeks here, and we're going to have a much more robust conversation about the work to learn models. And I believe very strongly that we are very far behind in the United States in terms of apprenticeships. Places like the UK and Singapore are much farther along. Australia, much farther along than we are in terms of providing a high school graduate or an individual with, let's say, 1 year of quote unquote rounding at college to get those great citizen benefits that college does provide. But how do corporations become those essentially lifelong learning institutions where learning is woven into the business plan and development becomes one of the most, if not the most important thing that a leader or a manager does. So, unfortunately, our high schools are not doing a great job of creating work-ready grads. Data shows that our colleges are not doing a great job creating work-ready grads. So it's going to fall on the corporations to really take that teach and that coach and that mentor aspect of their role, not only within their business, but for society for society at large. So we might be in a shiny ball moment here as it relates to upskilling and reskilling, but the enormity of the challenge, even if World Economic Forum is only half right, it's still 500 million people over the next 8 to 10 years that we need to reskill.
And we've been talking about not you and I, but sort of the general public, about remaking higher education and changing the way learning happens and what does high school need to focus on. And those are worlds that move slow, to be polite. We know that. The changes there are very slow. They're very meticulous. They're sometimes moving backwards, in fact. So there's that as well. But I think the point you're making is a great one of, even beyond the outcome, just let's think of this differently. Let's look at this in a different way and see if we can get people to the same outcome via a different path. Can we get people to 10 years at Google having never gone to college? And now Google's, Amazon's of the world are saying they're taking the college degree requirement off of their listings. Amazon, Walmart are doing the work to learn process. Work here as a 17-year-old and we'll help pay for college, or you won't have to pay anything for college. It's fascinating. I think there's a lot of movement happening quickly. So I think we're seeing that the age-old corporation has the money to move it forward, right? They have the ability to move quickly and change some things. You've spent the vast majority of your career in the world of professional education. As we think through this, can you discuss how the world of industry-recognized certifications, certs, whatever you want to call them, can help close that future skills gap and relate to the concept of that skills portfolio that you've laid out?
Yeah, we've got both an opportunity and a real challenge in the current environment. I don't know if our listeners know this stat, but there are well over 1 million credentials that are floating around in the marketplace, and these are badges from well-respected kind of online education providers. So everything from a badge to a certificate to a other kind of credential. And the vast majority of those 1 million credentials that are floating around out there have really no meaning in the hiring process. They don't have the currency that you need. And what I mean by currency is that I earn this credential and I can trade that for a better job, a better position, higher pay, more responsibility, et cetera. That credential is recognized as currency in the hiring market. Well, step in the world of professional education, which has been at this for 50 or more years. The certified public accountant is one example of a long-standing credential. The AICPA is the governing body. My externally recognized credential is the CFA credential, the Chartered Financial Analyst. Those are the letters that sit behind my name. And I worked very hard through a rigorous curriculum and an examination process, plus a work experience requirement to achieve that. And in the job market, when you're able to show degree plus industry recognized credential, that really puts you in a different category. But that doesn't solve the challenge that the degree is going to take you 4, 5, 6 years, and then the industry recognized credential is going to take even more than that. We need institutions like the AICPA, like CFA Institute, like the world of securities and wealth management and et cetera, marketing credentials, real estate, et cetera, to be thinking about how they unbundle their current kind of large format industry recognized credentials into smaller pieces that where you can bolt on a shorter, sharper credential onto another shorter, sharper credential, and all of a sudden the user. The employee hasn't necessarily gone to college, but they have a portfolio of credentials that have currency in the hiring market, and that portfolio should carry equal weight in hiring decisions. And you mentioned the Googles of the world that have their tech certificates, for example, that they're saying you get our tech certificates, and we're going to treat that as if you walked up to the door with a degree, and we all know that degrees cost far more than they should. We have challenges with the amount of time that it takes to go through. So this process of kind of unbundling and repackaging the whole certification process, the point I'm feebly trying to make here is we can look to the world of professional education for examples of how to create credentials that actually have currency. And let's put less weight on all of I'll call it fluff and all the stuff that doesn't have currency. Let's deprioritize that and really double down on, it's probably going to end up being a fairly large number, but 20,000 to 50,000 credentials that hiring managers can actually keep track of and award that hiring currency too.
Yeah, you've used the word currency. If I create the Strafford bill tomorrow, it's a green and has a 10 on it, and I go into a store to try to use it, it has no value. And so these credentials that get stood up, they're great, and maybe you're learning something, right? Maybe you're bringing skills forward, but if that credential doesn't have a value at a career, at a job, it doesn't do much. It doesn't do anything to further your career. I liken it, as you're talking, to two different things. We hear often about the on-ramp, right? You have to, we need this on-ramp into the work world. It sounds like you're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, putting people on the road at 50 miles an hour and giving them the opportunity to get up to 60, up to 65, up to 70 and into the left lane. It's not the on-ramp. It's not that long, winding on-ramp onto the highway, but it's, hey, we're going to start you off at 50 miles per hour. You're going to learn to build up while you're driving, while you're getting there. Does that make sense as an analogy to how maybe rethinking this is not the on-ramp to the road, but hey, let's get you on the road and get you moving forward, and we're going to give you the skills along the way to get up to speed with everybody else. Yeah,
and this on-ramp concept, or the road, if the road ahead, if you will, when I talk about the UK apprenticeship system and others that exist around the world, what I'm what I'm really applauding in the work that they've done is clearly identifying for market participants what the pathway into a particular job is. Here in the United States, yes, open and free markets are awesome, but an open and free hiring and workplace market that does not provide market participants with clear information about how to get from point A to point B to point C to even start in a particular career. There was a wonderful article in one of the major newspapers several months ago about how boys are being left behind in our educational system. And I'm a boy. You are too, and I'm very supportive of my fellow man. And it pains me greatly that our educational system is designed in such a way that boys get disinterested in school much faster, and they get left behind in part because of the lack of these clear and identifiable pathways, so that somebody can make great decisions. There should not be opacity in our hiring markets, and corporate leaders. If you're sitting around scratching your head, why am I not getting the talent that I need? It's because we as hiring managers and leaders have not done a great job of clearly identifying how to get in. Where's the door? How do you get in? And then how do you advance once you're in? It's far too jumbled, and I'll overuse the word opaque.
Yeah, I would say, again, that sounds like one of those pendulum swings where focus and money and advertising and marketing went towards expanding, women in the workforce, women on campus. And they didn't think through the pendulum swing, and we're swinging one way and we're going to swing back again. And I just want to find that sweet spot. Why not both? There's a great meme out there, the little girl from, I think, a food commercial. And she says, why not both? And sort of shrugs. And let's have both. Let's think through how to have both. Not let's attack one thing at the detriment of something else. I would love to see, in education especially, a whole approach, and you hear the whole student discussion a lot, right? The going to school and having to learn those social skills, the STEM skills, the art skills. I think education as a whole needs to think of it that way. A whole education, everyone with a seat at the table. And I know we're nowhere near that yet, but I'm hoping we're driving towards that, both in education, what you're saying about upskilling and reskilling revolution here specifically. How can the skills portfolio, though, and industry recognized credentials help with what I was just discussing, access, and even further affordability? How can this change maybe the landscape a little bit of those two things and how people get to the learning?
Yeah, well, we've, as parents and as educators, we've done a terrible job over the last 30 or 40 years saying, Billy, Johnny, Stevie, Susie, you've got to get a college education. That's the and characterized by many as the only way, toward toward the promised land.
You're getting a degree. You're getting a degree, one way or another.
I'm guilty of it. Our son Nicholas is the producer on this podcast, and we pushed very hard for Nick to get a college degree. And in the long term, I'm hopeful that it will be the right decision. But was there a different path that Nick could have taken that was more efficient, more effective into the world of work? And Johnny, you've got to go to college, and then Johnny sits in college for 2 years and spends and accumulates a lot of debt, and wakes up and goes, well, gosh, I wanted to be an electrician. and I'd be a lot happier as an electrician. And electricians are awesome. I know a lot of electricians and HVAC folks, and it's a great career path. Why aren't we making that more accessible, more affordable, and again, those clear line of sight to jobs and more career paths?
It makes so much sense to me, and I hope it's making sense to those who are listening as we discuss through the Reskilling Revolution. I dropped one name, you dropped one name of someone who's going to be on to discuss these in the future. One question of sort of content creation here, I think, can help the listeners. You're trying to tell a story, right? You're trying to paint a picture of what's going on with the Reskilling Revolution. How are you going about finding the people to have those discussions? How do you think through, Andy, who are the people I want to bring in to hammer home on these points? And then we'll say goodbye and we'll feed into those episodes over the next few weeks. But what's your process there for getting, obviously they're intelligent, they're professionals, but how do you go through building the people you bring in?
Yeah, we're going to have Mike Palmer on the next show. And, Mike does the Trending in Education podcast. So he's talked to all sorts of folks. So I wanted him to be the next guest for that kind of broad-based perspective, what he's seen. And then we're going to bring in Brandon Bastide, who has a very higher ed focus, in his career, but also a skill-based. So he's going to be able to bridge that gap between corporations and higher ed. And then we're going to have Kate Walker come in, and she runs presence learning on special education, and then I'm going to bring in some professional educators to talk about this. So this is a series that will take us well into April, and hopefully we do provide that diversity of thought, so that leaders that are grappling with this skills versus degrees kind of concept can come away with a better foundation for the decisions that they'll have to make on the subject.
I'm looking forward to all of them. I may have produced a show or two for each of the people you mentioned thus far, but we can touch on that at a later date. Andy, of course, AndrewTemte.com, The Balancing Act, available on Amazon, available where you buy books. Anywhere else people should be looking for content from you beyond this podcast, and where they can find it and when they can find it?
Yeah, I write every week. I write something called the Saturday Morning Muse, and I pick topics that are both timely, but also in the world of learning and work, the intersection of human skill and technical skill. So look for the Saturday Morning Muse, released every Saturday. We've got the podcast, and then pick up a copy of my book, The Balancing Act.
There you have it. And obviously, you are listening to this podcast, but you'll want to subscribe. You can do that on whatever app you are listening to. You can also check out, as we said, AndrewTemte.com. Be sure to share, too. This is not just something for you to keep to yourself. You want to share it with the masses and get people thinking a little bit differently about how business can really lean in to this reskilling revolution, how businesses can lean into learning overall and really changing the landscape of how employees grow, how they mature as employees, and how maybe they move on to that next step in their career in both learning about work, learning about themselves, and learning about how to interact with one another. A great episode, Andy. Appreciate being back on with you. And don't forget, you can listen all the time to this podcast, The Balancing Act.